Little Secrets of Controlling Your Opponent in Hand-to-Hand Combat. Video 2. How to relieve the holds to put your opponent at a disadvantage. In this series of videos, we'll uncover little but important secrets of the Kadochnikov system, without which it is quite possible your training will turn into a useless imitation or a warrior dance. You'll understand why and how to behave correctly in a situation of conflict and come out victorious. You don't have to fight your opponent, but control them instead. We'll share the secrets of controlling your opponent in hand-to-hand combat, which will create the right basis and the direction of movement to raise your chances of winning in any situation in your life. The previous video introduced you to the first step of controlling your opponent, the combination of the progressive and the rotary motion in one move that allows you to relieve any attack, including the ones with cold steel, because often enough the first task of ours is to prevent being hit. The only skill you need for that is relieving any attack. Softly take them in the plane of the attack, and using the turnover, the paradox from the first video, lead it over the plane of your body. This is your first basic skill. This video will teach you how to relieve holds and put your opponent into an uncomfortable position in the very first seconds of the interaction. As they say, the clever, the stronger. Soon enough we'll continue to the practical view of this skill, but before we go deeper, let us show you the forming of motor skills when we are faced with a new kind of action. When one starts to learn a skill with a motor component, one has to think of every step, watch one's every move. Everything is slow, clumsy and awkward. As one gains experience and gets the knack, they do it noticeably faster and better as we allow the brain to turn off and let the whole body work on automatic pilot. If one trains long enough to practice the skill until second nature, it seems that the body and the brain start working together in cooperation. While training in such a complicated skill as controlling the opponent in hand-to-hand combat, it is necessary to master and practice separately, one by one, a number of simple motor skills. Each time the skills have been practiced as second nature, the mind is free to master the next one. As a result, when all the simple moves are mastered and fine-tuned, the brain is able to process a huge volume of motor images, and all of it is adopted by the neurons, creating new links in the cerebral cortex, changing their structure. In other words, these images become part of the nervous system. The complex set of motor skills is a part of your body now and works at the level of subconscious. That's why it is so important to start learning from the right basic skills, the ones that form the basis of the right motor activity. This is the main basic skill of controlling the opponent in hand-to-hand combat we are going to explain in detail. Let us start. In most of us, the reasoning works as a relation of two forces, action and reaction. If you're seized by the arm, for instance, the first instinctive reaction will be to wrench your arm out, to get free of a hold. There are hundreds of moves in different martial arts that help to get different body parts free of holds. Yet they mostly work in the same relation of forces, action and reaction. So the task is only 50% solved. I don't think that you'll be content with such a percentage when it is about your life or health. This is why the Kadochnikov system teaches you to control your opponent instead of fighting them. Applied to the case of the hold, this principle means that you should not try to wrench your arm out of the hold, which will be a reaction, but change the vector of the force that your opponent applies to a direction that will not be dangerous for you. By doing this, you'll not only put your opponent in an uncomfortable position, but will also be creating a good starting point to control his actions. How does this work in practice? The main condition that your opponent needs to make an impact is a steady position, a foothold. If you rid them of their foothold, their advantage will be lost. The stability depends on the placement of our body's center of gravity. When the weight of the body is balanced on 2 feet, it is in the most stable position. This means that if we shift the weight of the opponent's body onto one of his feet, he'll lose balance. At the moment of a hold, the force of the opponent has one direction and consequently only one plane. However, we are aware that a human body can work in 3 planes. If the force of the opponent is concentrated in one plane, it means he is totally defenseless in the other 2 at that moment. Therefore, the only thing you need to do is to apply even minimal force in one of the planes to shift the opponent's center of gravity in the direction we need. As soon as his center of gravity is beyond the square of his foothold, the opponent will fall. If it's that simple, what is the secret? Why, instead of using this skill, people think up hundreds of useless and half-useless moves? Right you are. there is a secret. Moreover, the first part of it you already know from the first video. This is using the rotary motion to change the direction of the opponent's force, first resolving its negative impact into components. While the opponent applies the force in one plane, we shifted it to another. At this point, the score is 1-1. He applies the force and we neutralize it with minimal efforts, without actually fighting him, because we applied the force in a different plane. We know that there are 3 planes. We have to apply force in the third plane to change the score to 2-1 to us. But how to do that? The answer to this question is in the law of wrench. In physics, a wrench is a system of forces consisting of a pair of forces and a force perpendicular to the plane of the pair. In our case, we just lower the center of gravity, sitting slightly down, and this small effort is enough to topple the opponent over. This is the second basic skill that will allow you to control the opponent in hand-to-hand combat instead of fighting him directly according to the action-reaction principle.